The early morning sky was clear over the green woods of northern Sector 12. Birds were singing. The wind blew gently over the leaves. It looked like just another peaceful day. Then the sky tore open. 12 black pods came down like lightning. They didn't make noise, no fire trails, no warning, just silent death, falling fast. The pods didn't crash. They pierced the earth like spears, each one perfectly aimed and deeply buried at the edge of the forest. 2 lumber workers stood frozen, staring at the strange black metal pods. One of them took a step forward, confused. "What are those things?" And one of the pods opened with a sharp hiss. Steam escaped. A tall figure in a long black cloak stepped out slowly. His face was hidden behind a smooth mask. No eyes, no mouth, no sign of life. The man took 3 steps forward and stopped. He looked around silently. A deer nearby sniffed the air. In one blink, the cloaked figure threw a thin metal spike through its skull. The deer dropped instantly. No noise, no wasted movement. The 2 men backed away in fear. The second cloaked figure stepped out of the next pod. Then another. One by one, all 12 emerged. Each was identical tall, silent, wrapped in dark armor. No talking, no sound, no orders given. But they moved in perfect sync, like they were sharing one mind. One of the lumber workers whispered, "We should report this." He never got the chance. A silver blade flashed. His body dropped. The second man turned to run, but something hit him in the spine. He fell, twitching. He couldn't even scream. No witnesses, no alarms. No trace left behind. These were not soldiers. They were the Silent Order, the deadliest assassins in the Empire. Born in darkness, trained to kill without hesitation. Their mission: find and eliminate Dane Riker. Dane had vanished 5 years ago. After wiping out an entire Imperial battalion with nothing but a stolen shuttle, an old sniper rifle, and too much rage, since then, no one had seen him. But the Empire finally found a trace. A message hidden in a hacked beacon 3 weeks ago. It read only 2 words. Try again. Now they had. Deep in the forest, Dane Riker crouched in a small bunker covered in vines and leaves. He'd seen the pods fall. He knew who they were. He smiled without joy. "They finally came," he whispered. Dane stood tall, stretching his arms. He wasn't a soldier anymore. His hair had grown longer, streaks of gray. Touching the sides, his face had new scars. But his eyes were sharp, cold, ready. He looked at the screen on the wall. 12 red dots blinked into life, 1 for each assassin. His sensors had picked them up the second they landed. He walked over to a hidden compartment. Inside were weapons, old ones, handmade ones, sharp tools, and 1 long black knife made from the bones of a beast killed in the war. He strapped a blade to each leg, loaded his rifle, and packed a thin silver cord into his belt. Dane didn't plan to survive. He planned to send a message in the forest. The assassins moved like shadows. They didn't talk. They didn't use radios. Their movements were silent, invisible to most. But Dane wasn't most people. He had spent the last 5 years turning this forest into his battlefield. One of the assassins' designation formed ahead of the others. His sensors picked up slight movement, something small. He paused, looked around, then a thin wire snapped under his foot. Too late. A sharp branch swung from the trees, wrapped in barbed spikes, and smashed into his chest. The assassin didn't scream, simply slammed into a tree, impaled by 2 metal rods that pinned him like an insect. The others turned toward the sound. It was already quiet again. Assassin 4's helmet blinked red, then black. They had lost one. Without speaking, they formed a triangle formation. Tighter, more cautious. Still no fear. The Silent Order did not feel fear, but they had never fought him before. Dane watched it all from a screen. 1 down, 11 to go, he whispered to himself. You shouldn't have come. He remembered the screams of the soldiers years ago. The fire. The betrayal. The way the Empire had left him to die after he served them. He remembered how he survived. Cold, hungry, hunted. He remembered the promises he made that night. He would not beg. He would not hide. He would make them remember the cost of underestimating a human. At nightfall, another assassin disappeared. This one found something hanging from the trees, a mask. From one of the pods, when he got close, it exploded in smoke. Blinded for only 2 seconds, but that was enough. A blade slipped between his ribs from behind. He reached up to grab the attacker. But his hands found only air. By the time the smoke cleared, he was dead. A trail of blood led deeper into the forest. The others followed it, but it only led to more traps. One was a pit, another a net filled with sharp spikes, and one was a recording. They found it on a cracked helmet resting on a stone. The helmet blinked and played a voice. Dane's voice. "You're good," it said, "but I'm better, one by one. That's how this ends. Send more." The voice stopped. The helmet exploded. Back in the Imperial capital, the commanders watched. From a distant ship, they had live feeds from inside the pods. They saw everything. One commander growled, "He's playing with them." Another said coldly, "Let him." In the end, they always win. But deep down, they weren't sure. This wasn't just a fight. It was a warning. And the first 2 bodies were only the beginning. In the forest, the remaining assassins circled closer. They would adapt. They would study his tactics. They would learn, but Dane had already studied them. He had years of practice, and the night was just beginning. The forest looked calm from above, but anyone inside could feel the tension crawling under the trees. The birds were gone. The air was still. Every step taken by the assassins was silent, but now it felt uncertain. Assassin 7 moved ahead of the others, scanning the trees. His thermal vision flickered. He picked up something warm, human-shaped. Hanging, he stepped closer. It was one of their own. Assassin 4's body dangled upside down, arms broken, spine twisted. His helmet was missing. The body had been sliced open and sewn back together with vines and thin metal cords. Across the chest, marked in dark red blood, were the words, "Not enough." 7 froze. His training said no emotion, but his hand clenched slightly. Wasn't a kill. This was a message. Behind him, the other assassins appeared, each one pausing as they looked up at the scene. No words were spoken, but the mission had changed. This was no longer a target. This was a hunter. A mile away, Dane Riker watched the scene on a tiny screen, propped up by tree roots. He didn't smile. He didn't relax. Simply stared. His eyes cold and steady. He had studied the Silent Order for years. He knew how they trained cut off from sound, raised in isolation, made to kill without hesitation. They weren't normal. They weren't even soldiers. But they were still people. People could bleed. People could break. And Dane was going to prove it. He reached for a nearby sack and pulled out a folded map. Red X's covered the forest like a storm. Each X was a trap, a plan, a move made before the game even started. He circled one in black. It was time to thin. The herd again. Assassin 2, the tallest and fastest of the group, was ordered to sweep the west side. He moved swiftly between trees, his cloak making him nearly invisible in the low light. He used thermal sensors, sound detectors, motion, trackers. Nothing picked up, till he stepped into the wrong clearing. A branch snapped behind him. He spun instantly, knife drawn. But no one was there. Then he noticed something wrong. Birds were hanging from the trees, sliced open, organs removed. Each one had a number carved into its side. Did 9-8 Assassin 2. Narrowed his eyes. The next bird said 3. He stepped back too late. The ground opened under him. A narrow pit, lined with sharpened sticks, waited below. He twisted as he fell, but a spike pierced his leg. Another sliced through his side. He landed with a grunt. Alive, but wounded. He reached up to grab the edge, but a hand grabbed his. Wrist first. A strong human hand. Dane looked down into the pit, face blank. "That's 3, he whispered. Then he pulled the assassin's own blade from his side and drove it into his throat. Assassin 2 twitched, then stopped moving. The others heard the alert in their head. Assassin 2's life signal lost. Now only 10 remained. Shadow 6, the unit's leader, stopped and scanned the forest. His voice came over the private coms, one of the rare times he spoke. We underestimated him. The others didn't respond. They knew what it meant. This wasn't a failed mission anymore. This was a war. That night, the assassins regrouped at a small clearing. They stood in a circle. One by one, they uploaded reports directly to Shadow 6's mind. The data showed terrifying details. Their tracking equipment was being jammed. Their drones were crashing midair. Their traps had been turned against them. Even their body temperatures were being tracked and used somehow against their own camouflage. Dane Riker was fighting like someone who had trained with them. That's exactly what he had done years ago in the Empire's Black program. Dane had worked on assassin tech, infiltration systems, and jungle warfare for high-value targets. The Empire had thought he was useful till he spoke out. Then they ordered him killed, but Dane survived. Now he was using everything they taught him, and he was winning. By morning, Assassin 9 had vanished. The others found a single boot, nailed to a tree, filled with blood. There was no body. But the message was clear. You're in my forest now. Shadow 6 knelt near the spot. He reached down and pulled a string from the ground. It was soaked in sap and blood. Then he stood and turned to the others. We split into 3 teams, he ordered. We push him from the forest into open ground. But that's exactly what Dane wanted. 100 meters away, Dane watched from inside the thick roots of an old tree, hidden like a ghost. He could hear their footsteps through the soil. Could hear the shift in breathing patterns. They were trying to adapt. Good. He wanted them to. He wasn't just trying to kill them. He was trying to teach them something. Humans didn't run. Humans didn't beg. Humans could fight back. He pulled a small black cube from his pocket, tapped it once, and tossed it near the enemy's path. It stuck to a tree. When Assassin 8 passed by it, the cube beeped. It spoke. Dane's voice, soft but sharp. You took everything from me. Now I take you, one by one. Then it exploded in light and sound. Assassin 8 dropped, screaming, blinded and stunned. Dane walked out from the trees behind him, calm. He raised his knife and cut the silence again. By the end of the day, only 9 assassins remained. But something had changed in their eyes. It wasn't just duty now, it was fear. The kind that only humans could inspire. The forest felt like a graveyard. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. The remaining 9 assassins didn't speak, but they all knew something was wrong. The mission was no longer a simple execution. This wasn't a rogue soldier. This was a ghost with a grudge. They adjusted their formations. Smaller squads, less movement, traps disabled as they advanced. They scanned every tree, every shadow. But none of that mattered, because Dane Riker was always one step ahead. Assassin 11, youngest of the Silent Order, was paired with Assassin 5. They moved cautiously down a narrow trail lined with rotting leaves. Above them, birds sat still, watching. No calls, no flapping wings. Then they found something strange. A series of symbols carved into a fallen log. Not Empire code. Not human military marks. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Assassin 11 tilted his head. Was it a countdown? No, a kill count. Each number had a small line under it. Like a trophy list, he scanned the area. That's when he saw it, just for a split-second movement in the branches. He raised his rifle. Nothing. He switched to thermal. Still nothing. Assassin 5 tapped his arm, silently signaling, "Keep moving." They did, but Dane had already marked them. Elsewhere, Shadow 6 stood in a clearing surrounded by strange wooden shapes, circles, spears, bones. He recognized some of it ancient tribal warnings. Others were symbols from the old wars on Earth. This wasn't just warfare. This was psychological. Picked up a piece of burnt wood. Scratched into it were the words, "You taught me this." He dropped it. For the first time in years, he felt something like doubt. He had led many missions, killed rebels, executed traitors, But never had he felt like the hunted, till now. Dane watched from the trees above. His face was calm, but his body was tense. He could see their fear. They were trained to hide it, but their movements were slower now. Their heads turned more often. They checked behind them too much. He whispered to himself, good. He didn't want them to die easy. He wanted them to understand what it felt like to be betrayed, to be left behind, to be hunted by your own. Just like they had done to him. Just like the Empire had done to Earth. He had survived their purge. Now they would feel what he felt. Assassin 5 and 11 entered a rocky ravine lined with moss. Water dripped from the walls. The air was thick and still. A red dot blinked on their HUD's movement ahead. They raised weapons. A figure stood at the end of the ravine, barely visible. It looked like a man, tall, still waiting. Assassin 5 motioned forward, slowly approaching. Assassin 11 flanked. Right? As they moved in, the figure didn't move. Closer now, closer. Then Assassin 11 reached the figure and touched it. A dummy. Just cloth, wood, and wire. Too late. The real trap activated. Spikes shot up from the ground, slicing Assassin 11's legs. He screamed a sound rarely heard from a silent. Assassin 5 turned, trying to help. Then a net dropped, dragging him backward through the dirt into a hidden pit. Dane stood above it. Wrong turn, he said flatly. He dropped a small flash charge, then disappeared into the trees. That night only 7 assassins remained, 6 active. 1 assassin, 11 injured, bleeding, fading fast. They regrouped. Again, this time deeper in the forest, near a rock formation. Shadow 6 ordered silence, but he knew it didn't matter. Dane didn't need sound. He used the forest like a weapon. One of the assassins activated a drone. The drone lifted quietly, scanned the area, then came down fast and hard, straight through his chest. It wasn't a drone at all. It was a disguised blade, launched from a tree. The assassin dropped, twitching. The others raised weapons, firing. Into the trees? But Dane was already gone. Miles away, Dane slid down a slope, breathing slowly. He was tired. His shoulder had a small cut. One of their darts had grazed him earlier, but it didn't matter. He checked his map again. Only 6 left. He knew their patterns. He knew their leader Shadow 6 would grow bolder now, more aggressive, less careful. That's what Dane needed. Because the real trap wasn't the spikes, or nets, or explosions. The real trap was pride, and it was already working. The next morning, Shadow 6 made a decision. No more hiding, he said, breaking silence. They would lure Dane's set, their own trap. But Dane had already seen them move. He already knew where they would wait, because that part of the forest, he had built it. Every stone, every branch, every hidden wire. When they entered that zone, they weren't setting a trap. They were walking into one. The hook for the next part had already been tied, and the forest was hungry. The sun barely rose above the trees. Its light touched the canopy. But down on the forest floor, everything remained in shadows. Only 6 assassins were left now, one of them wounded. All of them tense. Shadow-6 stood in the center of their new camp, watching the trees. He didn't blink, didn't breathe heavily, but his thoughts raced. He could feel it. This was no longer control. This was desperation. The Empire had sent them to eliminate a man, but what they got was something else. Something they couldn't explain. An hour before dawn, Assassin 10 returned to camp alone. His cloak was torn. His hands shook. He didn't say anything. Just walked slowly into the center and dropped to one knee. The others stared, silent. Blood ran from his mouth. Not his blood. He looked up at Shadow 6. He's not human, he whispered. Then he collapsed. On his chest was a mark burned deep. Into the armor, a human handprint. Fingers curled, burned into the plating like molten fire. The other assassins stared. They had trained for years. They didn't feel fear. But now they were afraid to speak. Shadow 6 scanned the body. The burn wasn't made by fire. It was made by something else in known energy. Focused. Hot enough to bend metal and bone. The data didn't make sense. No known human weapon could do this. And Dane Riker, he was supposed to be alone. But what if he wasn't? What if he had changed? Miles away, Dane moved through thick fog near the river. His shirt was soaked in sweat and blood. Had a burn along his side, small, painful, but not enough to stop him. He dropped his gear beside a flat rock and knelt down. Inside a sealed metal box, a small glowing vial pulsed with blue light. He pulled it out and injected it into his shoulder. His body shivered. His vision blurred. For 3 seconds, everything spun. Then it cleared. The pain faded. His muscles hardened. He could feel his heartbeat. Slow, controlled, powerful. This was not medicine. This was Textolan Tech Bioenhancer Serum originally, developed by the Empire. Dane had taken it years ago during a mission on Titan. He was never supposed to use it, but he knew this fight wasn't just physical anymore. The assassins were elite, but he had become something else entirely. The Silent Order made their next move. Shadow 6 split the squad again. Forming to hunt teams, 3 would drive Dane toward the cliff zone. The others would trap him from above. It was simple, too simple, because as they spread out, they didn't see the signs. They didn't notice the false footprints or the altered barkontrees.or, the broken leaf patterns. Dane had left them clues on purpose, and they were walking straight into the ambush. Assassin 6 spotted movement. A head barely visible through fog. He raised his weapon and fired. Nothing, just smoke. Then he heard it, a whistle behind him. He turned, a rope whipped around his throat. He was yanked backward into the air, upside down, slammed into a branch. Dane dropped from above like a ghost. No words, just the sound of a blade slicing through armor. The body hit the ground quietly. No scream, no warning. Another one. Down. Meanwhile, the second team reached the cliff edge. They waited. Shadow 6 stared through his visor, trying to see movement. He was sure Dane would come. Then they heard the click. Too late. Explosives hidden. Under moss triggered a blast. The edge of the cliff collapsed, taking 2 assassins with it. One screamed. The other didn't. Only Shadow 6 remained on the ledge. He backed away, heart pounding hard in his chest. He looked down far below. One assassin was impaled on stone. The other, gone. Only 3 assassins were now confirmed active. Dane watched from a distance. He wasn't smiling. He felt the pain in his chest with every breath. The serum helped, but only so much. He knew his body was reaching its limit. Still, he stood tall. He whispered to himself, "You should have finished me when you had the chance." Then he lifted a stolen Imperial tablet and sent a pulse. A drone hidden in the canopy activated and flew toward the enemy camp. Not to attack, to deliver a message. Shadow 6 watched the drone descend. He aimed his weapon, but it didn't fire. Drone landed and opened. Inside was a severed helmet. Assassin, burned with the handprint still fresh. A tiny speaker inside played a voice. Dane's voice. "You created me. You taught me to kill. You left me for dead. Now you see what?" That made... Then silence. Shadow 6 crushed the drone under his boot. He turned to the others. "Prepare for the final strike," said voice sharp, but in his mind, he didn't believe the words. Not fully. Because if Dane Riker could survive everything they'd done, then maybe they weren't hunting a man. Maybe they were being hunted by something much worse. The forest was dying, not from age or time, but from fire. It started with a single flare, then 10 more. Then barrels of igniters rolled from a hover pack and burst open in a wave of liquid flame. Trees lit up like paper. The green turned to smoke. Birds flew in panic. Ash rained down like snow. The Silent Order had finally lost patience. Shadow 6 had given the order. Burn him out. Remaining 3 assassins, Shadow 6, Assassin 1, and Assassin 3, moved through the spreading blaze like shadows. Their black armor shimmered in the heat. Their masks filtered smoke. Their sensors tracked movement. The flames would drive Dane Riker into the open. That was the plan. But they didn't realize they weren't pushing him out. They were sealing themselves in. Miles away, Dane crouched in a narrow ditch covered in damp ferns, his face smeared with soot and mud. The smoke hadn't reached him yet, but the wind was shifting. He could hear the roar of fire in the distance. He could smell burning bark and melted plastic from his broken perimeter sensors. They had set the woods on fire. Desperate move. Stupid move. Dane reached down and rolled up the sleeve of his jacket. His veins pulsed with a faint blue glow. The enhancer serum was still holding, but not for long. He pulled out a thin needle. Filled with a second dose, he stared at it. This was his last shot. Too much would burn him from the inside. But he needed more strength. Just enough. He jabbed the needle into his arm and gritted his teeth as the fluid surged through him. His hands trembled. His heart slowed, then steadied. Time to finish it. Assassin 3 spotted movement in the smoke. A fast blur, small, human-sized. He activated his motion lock and fired. The shot exploded, a tree and half-wood shattered everywhere. But there was nothing behind it, no body. Just a hanging rope with a mannequin. Decoy. Suddenly something dropped from above. A wire wrapped around his neck and dragged him upward into the smoke-filled canopy. He reached for his blade, but Dane was already there. He didn't say a word. He just slammed the butt of his rifle into the assassin's jaw, then stabbed once quick and deep between the ribs. Assassin 3's body dropped silently into the fire below. Assassin 1 caught the signal drop. Another gone. He paused, scanned every angle. Then he saw faint footprints, leading toward the old Ranger Tower. He followed them. The old tower was half-burnt, creaking in the heat. He entered with caution, rifle up, inside, empty. Then the trap sprung. The floor gave way into a pit filled with rusted spikes and broken metal. But he was fast. He landed hard, twisting just enough to avoid being impaled. Still, he broke his leg. Badly, he tried to move. That's when he heard the click. A tiny mine under the dirt. It's not strong enough to kill, just enough to cripple. Boom. The tower exploded in flames above him. Smoke filled the pit. His helmet cracked. His signal blinked red. Assassin 1 screamed. For the first time in his life, Shadow 6 heard it all. His visor flashed. Assassin 3 terminated Assassin 1. Incapacitated, only he remained now. The leader of the Silent Order, the deadliest killer in the Empire. And even he was beginning to doubt himself. He turned slowly in the smoke, eyes scanning the trees. Then he saw something ahead. Not a man, not a movement. Shape, tall, human, standing still. Dane Riker, covered in blood and ash, eyes glowing. Faint blue, alive. Dane stepped into the firelight. He carried no rifle now, just a long black blade in one hand and a coil of wire in the other. Shadow 6 raised his weapon. Dane dropped the wire, raised his free hand, and pointed at him. "You shouldn't have come here," Dane said, voice rough, deep. Shadow 6 fired. Dane moved. Too fast. The shot hit air. Then Dane was in front of him, swinging the blade. The two collided in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Metal clashed, sparks flew. The heat scorched them both. Dane fought like a machine, but Shadow 6 was still strong, still trained. They traded blow after blow, neither giving up, until Dane slammed his forehead into the assassin's mask. The mask cracked. Then Dane whispered into the broken lens, "I was the one you couldn't break." He slammed the blade into Shadow 6's shoulder, forcing him down. Shadow 6 gasped, barely breathing. Then Dane stepped back. He didn't kill him. He just left him there, burned, broken, defeated. As a message, Dane limped away as the fire roared louder. The forest behind him collapsed in flame. He pulled out a beacon, the same one the Empire had used to track him. He rewired it, then broadcast one simple message into the void. "Send more." Then he disappeared into the smoke. In the forest, now a burning ruin, whispered his name. Dane Riker, the man who killed 12 assassins. The man the Empire couldn't erase. The message was written in fire and blood, and the galaxy had just started to listen. Smoke still hung in the sky like a curtain pulled over the world. The forest was gone. There's nothing left but smoldering trees, cracked stone, and silence broken only by the faint groans of metal cooling in the ash. Dane Riker sat near a stream, his back against a burnt-out log. Blood dripped from his side, soaking into the ground. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the serum wearing off. His body had taken too much damage, too many cuts, too many hours without rest. But he was alive, and only one assassin was left. Shadow-6, the best the Empire had. The last of the Silent Order. Dane reached into his bag and pulled out a small white square. Cloth, clean. He wrapped it around his wound and hissed as the pain shot through his ribs. He didn't scream, didn't flinch. He'd suffered worse. He looked up at the gray sky, eyes hard. Time to end this. Miles away, Shadow-6 dragged himself through the ashes. His left arm, it was broken. His shoulder was torn open from Dane's blade. His mask was gun ripped away during the fight.
Half his face was burned.
The other half bled from a deep gash near his eye. But he was still moving, still breathing, still hunting. He'd failed the mission, but he hadn't failed the purpose. The Empire had sent him to silence a traitor now. Even with one arm and broken bones, he would finish the job. It's not because of orders. Not for honor, but because Dane Riker had made it personal. The two men moved closer. Dane followed. Shadow-6's trail drops of blood, broken branches. A half-smashed drone left behind like a breadcrumb. Shadow-6 followed the ghost of Dane's. Scent burnt earth, scorched metal, footprints burned into dead grass. Neither tried to hide, not anymore. It was no longer a hunt. It was a duel at sunset. They met in the ruins of an old cum station half buried under dirt, once used for deep space calls during Earth's early colonization phase. The satellite dish still stood, rusted and bent. Leaning to the side like a dying tree, Dane stood on one side of the ruins. Shadow-6 stood on the other. For a moment, neither moved. Then Dane spoke. "You could have left." Shadow-6's voice was dry and sharp. "So could you?" Dane nodded, "But I didn't." "No. You came back to send a message." Dane's eyes narrowed. Not just to the Empire, to everyone watching. Then Shadow-6. Charged. The fight was brutal. No tricks, no traps. Just two warriors broken. Bleeding, but too stubborn to fall. Dane dodged the first strike and countered with a headbutt. Shadow-6 returned it with a knee to the stomach. They rolled across the ground, fists slamming into each other. Bones cracking. Dane's knife found Shadow-6's thigh. Shadow-6's boot crushed Dane's hand. They both fell back, gasping, but neither ran. They came again, and again, until finally Dane slammed Shadow-6 into the metal base of the Cums Tower. Sparks flew. The old system flickered on. The satellite dish groaned, then activated, and suddenly a live broadcast began transmitting. The Empire was watching. Shadow-6 looked up at the blinking light on the dish. "No," he growled. "Planned this." Dane, breathing hard, wiped blood from his mouth. "I needed them to see," said. He lifted Shadow-6 by the collar and dragged him into the center of the camera's view. "This is what you made," Dane said aloud, facing the camera. He pointed to Shadow-6. "You built him, trained him, programmed him to kill for you." Then he pointed to himself. "And you tried to kill me too, but I survived. And now the whole galaxy knows. You dropped Shadow-6 to the ground. You want Earth broken. You want humans afraid. But we don't fear you." He looked straight into the lens. "We fight back." Shadow-6 coughed, his body shaking. He looked up at Dane. "You should kill me." Dane stared down at him. "No," he said. "You're the message now." He activated a beacon and shoved it into Shadow-6's chest. It blinked red. "You'll wake up on a transport. Alive. Broken. Let the Empire see what's left of its finest weapon." Then Dane walked away, disappearing into the smoke above them. The signal reached orbit. Empire ships received it. Officers watched in silence as the video played Shadow-6 defeated. Dane standing tall, a human, untrained, alone but victorious. And for the first time in years, the Empire hesitated. The stars above Earth flickered in the dark sky like silent watchers. Orbiting far above, an Empire warship drifted in low silence. Inside its steel heart, 12 generals sat around a circular table, their eyes locked on a single screen. That screen, Shadow 6's broken body shook in a shuttle corner, half-conscious, bruised, burned, alive. The footage Dane had sent played on repeat. This is what you made, this is what's left. Not one general spoke. Not one dared breathe too loud. They had sent 12 assassins, the Empire's finest strain from birth, feared. Across worlds, only one returned, not victorious, but destroyed. And still, Dane Riker lived. Shadow 6 lay strapped to a medical slab in the ship's core. Tubes ran from his arms. His face was swollen. His right eye wouldn't open. Every breath was shallow. The med drones patched his wounds silently. He was awake. Barely. He saw the white lights. He felt the cold metal. But what haunted him wasn't the pain. It was the man's voice. Dane's voice. Ringing in his skull. You'll live. You'll tell them. You're the message now. The one thing the Silent Order feared more than death was failure. And this was complete failure. Back on Earth, Dane stood on the edge of a mountain, overlooking the smoke-stained forest below. Fires had died out. The wind had carried the ash, but the smell still lingered. Burned bark, blood, steel. He held a cracked Imperial data tablet. In his hands, he was rewriting one final signal. One more message. His side still ached. His arm barely moved. His body was failing, but his will stronger than ever. He looked up at the stars, began to speak. The signal shot from an old orbital relay when Dane had reactivated using a salvaged satellite dish. A wideband message went out to every edge of space. No encryption, no code, just raw truth. His face appeared in systems across the galaxy military. Feeds pirate stations, even distant colonies. This is Dane Riker. Human, soldier, target. You sent 12 killers to silence me. I sent 11 back in pieces. One I spared.
Ow!
So he could carry this message. He paused. His face bruised, his eyes burning. You think Earth is weak? Do you think humans are soft? Do you think we'll run? But we don't run. We learn. We bleed. Then we fight back. He leaned closer to the lens. Next time, send 100. You'll need every single one. Then the screen went black. In the Empire's core command, room alarms rang. The general shouted. Minister of Control slammed his fist on the table. His transmission reached 37 sectors. Shut it down. But it was too late. Dane's message had spread. Across colonies, people whispered his name. On backwater planets, rebels replayed the video in secret meetings. In dark prisons, prisoners smiled for the first time in years. And in far-off military bases, young soldiers, human and alien alike, watched it and felt something strange rise in their chests. Hope. Back on Earth, Dane shut off the last beacon and dropped the tablet. He sat beneath a dying tree, breathing slowly. His blade lay across his lap. He didn't know how long he had left. His body was wearing out. The enhancer serum had pushed him past the edge. But he'd done what he came to do. The galaxy now knew humans were not prey. They were not weak, or not finished. They were dangerous. He leaned back and whispered to the wind, "Let them come." And far above, across the stars, the Empire had heard him. The silence over Earth didn't last. Not after that message. Dane. Riker's words had become fire spreading through encrypted channels, pirate networks, and even Imperial comms. Colonies whispered his name like a spark that refused to die. Man who killed 11 assassins. The man who sent the last one back as a message. The human they couldn't erase. And now the Empire had a problem, because he was never supposed to survive. On the Imperial warship Lance of Purity. General Liskalon stood before a war map. Red markers flashed around Earth's solar system. Patrol. Fleets repositioned. Reinforcements were rerouted. Orders were being barked every second. A junior officer hesitated before speaking. "Should we?" "Prepare an invasion." General Scallon's eyes narrowed. "No," he growled. "We don't invade, we erase." Behind him, Shadow Six bandaged, silent, half his face still rosted like a ghost. He didn't argue, didn't blink, but deep inside, for the first time in his life, he doubted the Empire, because he had seen the look in Dane Riker's eyes. Not revenge, not rage, purpose back on Earth. Dane awoke before dawn. The pain in his chest had settled into a dull throb. His limbs were heavy. His ribs ached with every breath, but he stood. He had rebuilt the ruins of the old Cum station, strengthened it, reinforced it, turned it into a beacon. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was calling them out. The new signal. Broadcast wasn't a threat. It was a call. To every colony they left behind. Okay? To every human they enslaved. To every voice that's been silenced. You are not alone. He uploaded coordinates, safe zones, caches, resistance contacts. The rebellion had no name yet. No flag. No army. But it had a voice, and that was enough. Within days, the Empire scrambled to contain the spread, but the galaxy was already listening. Small uprisings began on moons. Mining colonies, deep space rigs. People who had lived in fear now had a symbol, not a hero. A warning. Dane Riker, the assassin slayer, the ghost of Earth, the first human to punch back. And the Empire realized something chilling. He hadn't just survived. He had started something. In a darkened chamber on a distant Imperial planet, a shadowy figure watched the recordings again. No face, no name, just a voice, sharp as ice. "Send the Enforcer Corps." An aide hesitated. "That's overkill, sir? It's just one man." The figure turned slowly. "That's the problem," the voice whispered. "One man just started a war." On Earth, Dane climbed a rocky ridge overlooking what was left of the forest. Ash scattered in the wind. The sun broke through clouds, washing the valley in light. He pulled a fresh blade from his pack, simple, sharp, and sharp, with 11 notches. For every assassin who came, he looked to the sky and whispered one final time, "You." Sent assassins. Now send armies. Because now he was ready, and the stars would never forget the day a human started the fire.